much. I'm going to do the very awkward thing and open my laptop, which is a very normal thing to do these days. Give me 1 second. Cool. Awesome. Let's see if this clicker works. Oh. Hey, it works. Cool. Awesome. So first of all, thank you all so much for spending your Friday morning with me. I flew in from New York like 48 hours ago. So I have no idea where I am, what time it is, or really what's going on. So if I just like fall over, just sort of pick me up and wheel me out, and like it's going to be fine. Everything's going to be great. But I really appreciate you all spending your Friday morning with me. Hello, my name is Anya. I have been in the games industry, as Marie said, 15 years at this point, which is very wild. Use your daily sunblock and use a retinol at night, and your skin's just going to be glowing. It's going to be perfect. I got my start at a little Flash gaming website called addictinggames.com. So if you are a Flash developer or were a Flash developer, I've probably chatted with you. Would love to chat Flash. Flash is awesome. I then moved on to Nickelodeon. And then I sort of realized that the corporate life was not for me. I hated that there were like 4 floors of marketing and nobody talked to each other. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense. I don't understand how this company runs. So I got this job at Kickstarter as the first ever games outreach lead at the company. And I was there for almost 6.5 years. I ended up as the director of games. I ran games at Kickstarter for about 2 years, and then moved on to a company called BackerKit, doing tabletop games account something. Titles don't really mean anything in games, I'll be totally honest with you. And as of Wednesday, I am now a full-time freelancer in games, which is really cool. Yay, it's very exciting and terrifying. I have bills to pay. I'm also a musician in New York City, so if you have heard about the sax playing person, that's probably me. It's a weird thing that I do. So the first thing I want to do really quickly is just sort of set the tone of how does crowdfunding work, just because I think sometimes I assume everyone knows how crowdfunding works because I'm so ingrained in it, but I'm realizing that's not necessarily the case, so we'll do a quick little refresher. You come up with a game idea. That's cool and exciting and fun. Oh no, I need funding. Money is awful and I hate it and I don't want to ask for it. You can come to crowdfunding. So what does that mean? I will ask for X amount of money in X amount of in Y days, right? So like I'll ask for $50,000 and I will be able to raise that in 30 days, let's say. People who are called your backers will pledge for a reward. And if I meet my goal, I make the thing and the rewards are sent to my backers. That's sort of the general idea of crowdfunding, right? Does that all make sense? We're all on the same page here? You guys awake? Cool, awesome. So I also really wanted to do a quick deep dive on how crowdfunding actually started, because I did this presentation, like a version of this presentation, I think last year, and I ended up doing a bunch of research on how crowdfunding actually started, because I think everybody just assumes that Kickstarter started crowdfunding, but that's actually not the case. Crowdfunding started in 1997, at least online, the first sort of like iteration of what crowdfunding is, right? So in 1997, British band, I am going to butcher this name, so please correct me. I believe it's pronounced Marilyn. Sure, you know what? That's canon now. They funded their reunion tour with online donations from fans. So this is the first time that crowdfunding existed on the internet, on the World Wide Web. Then in 2001, ArtistShare was the first dedicated crowdfunding platform, and they launched in 2001. It's actually still active today, which is kind of wild to think about. They use offers instead of the word pledges. There's no comments, there's no community. They just accept pledges for people to be able to be like, here you go, you're a musician, here's some money. And they're a little sporadic with their projects, but this is really sort of like what solidified crowdfunding as an option. In 2007, Indiegogo launches. I think we all know what that is. In 2008, the Great Recession happened. People looked to each other to fund their creative ideas. There was no money happening. This seems very similar to today. It sort of feels like we're going through a second Great Recession, and so crowdfunding has definitely had a little bit of an uptick. In 2009, a little website called Kickstarter launches. This is also what definitely amplified my personal career, so thank you, Kickstarter. In 2012, President Obama signed the Jobs Act, also known as the crowdfunding bill, and this was important because it legalized equity crowdfunding. In 2012, BackerKit launches. BackerKit actually launched as a Kickstarter project called Diaspora. Ro and Max, who are the founders of BackerKit, saw that for Kickstarter, there wasn't really a pledge manager option, so they created BackerKit as a way to push pledge management as an option for creators in order to, like, you know, I have 1,000 backers and I have then 1,000 different options of things that I need to deal with post-campaign. That's really what BackerKit did, at least in 2012. 2013, Patreon launches. I put this on here because this is a subscription-based reward system, so it's a little bit different than crowdfunding, but I think it sort of like is within the family of crowdfunding. 2015, Fig launches. Fig was a video games only crowdfunding site that also utilized equity crowdfunding, right? So thanks to Obama in 2012, we have 2015, Fig launches. Fig was also the brainchild of Tim Schafer, who used Kickstarter to fund his project and went, I think I can just kind of do this by myself. And he created Fig, which is kind of cool. In 2015, GameFound launches. GameFound is a competitor site specifically for tabletop. So they are 100% tabletop-based crowdfunding platform. And in 2021, this was a very interesting time. Kickstarter announced a move to blockchain. And this opened the floodgates for a lot of different reasons. It was not just the video games industry that sort of went, we don't want to have anything to do with this. The tabletop industry, I would argue, actually like very much rejected the concept of blockchain. So this allowed BackerKit to launch their own crowdfunding platform in 2022, which is kind of wild. So that's kind of the timeline of crowdfunding and sort of where we are today. So just to kind of round that up, we have 3 major crowdfunding sites. We have 4, really. We have Kickstarter, we have Indiegogo, we have BackerKit, and we have GameFound. There's a handful of smaller ones. There's a bunch of country-specific ones. There's also a film crowdfunding site called Seed and Spark. So there's much smaller options in crowdfunding, but I think just for the purposes of this, focusing on sort of the main 4 is really important. 2023, Fig ends up closing their doors. They sold to a company called Republic. Earlier this year, they completely shut down. So equity crowdfunding still exists. It's just no longer on Fig. It's at a company called Republic, which ended up buying Fig. So you have all these different crowdfunding options, and you're like, oh my God, what do I do? I don't know which website I'm supposed to go to put my game on, right? Some of them are a little bit obvious. If you have a video game, you're not going to go to GameFound because GameFound is only tabletop. So I wanted to just quickly sort of run through a very, very, very high level version of what all of these different crowdfunding websites look like and what they offer. So the first, Indiegogo. Indiegogo is a rewards-based crowdfunding. So what I mean is that you will deliver a reward, whether that's digital or physical. They offer flexible and full funding options. Flexible funding is, I need $50,000, but I can only raise $20,000, and I'm going to take that $20,000. There's pros and cons to that. We can kind of get into that a little bit later, but they offer flexible and full funding. Full funding is, I need $50,000, and I will only get that $50,000 if I raise that $50,000. They also offer something called in demand to any creator. This is sort of just like you can continue funding after you funded. Sort of the easiest way to describe it. It's also very popular with design and technology creators. BackerKit. BackerKit is also a wonderful crowdfunding option. BackerKit is also a rewards-based crowdfunding website. BackerKit does, I almost said I don't work there anymore. BackerKit offers full funding, so no equity or flexible crowdfunding. So you ask for an amount, you make that full amount, and that's the only way that money is exchanged. BackerKit also offers crowdfunding, pledge management, and marketing. I think because we're going to cut this presentation a little bit short, I was going to initially go into what all of these options are, but I can chat with folks after if anybody would like a little bit more of a deep dive. BackerKit is also mostly tabletop, but I know that they really, really want to have video games on BackerKit. So if anybody is interested, please let me know. I'm happy to chat with you after. GameFound. GameFound is a really interesting site. They're also a rewards-based crowdfunding, full funding, no equity, no flexible crowdfunding, tabletop games exclusively. So no video games, no film and technology, film or design and technology, no music, just tabletop games. They offer crowdfunding and pledge management sort of rolled into one, which is a really, really great option. They're very popular in Europe, and they're big in the traditional board games space. So like card games, party games, not so much. Board games, huge, huge, huge on GameFound. And of course, the big one, Kickstarter. Rewards-based crowdfunding. Full funding, no equity, no flexible funding. That will never happen on Kickstarter. Kickstarter is still definitely the dominant force in games crowdfunding, and quite frankly, most crowdfunding. It's pretty rare to find another site that can dominate over Kickstarter in any category. Indiegogo a little bit, but kind of a conversation for another day. As of 2022, they offer crowdfunding marketing and pledge management, which was a direct response to BackerKit launching a crowdfunding platform. It's a little bit different how they offer these. Again, happy to chat with folks after just to kind of run through this. I think one of the things that's really important when we're looking at crowdfunding for games is to also look at what actual games were funded, right? Because I think sometimes we forget about that. So I put a couple of things together. You can kind of see like these all exist because of crowdfunding. It's important to note that doesn't necessarily mean that they exist solely because of crowdfunding. Crowdfunding was a piece of the pie of the funding pie. So crowdfunding still has like a very, very large part in the history and in the release of these games, which is really cool. So Pathfinder, Broken Age, Divinity, Divinity Original Sin also, they crowdfunded the board game version of that game, which is really cool. It's been a pleasure watching Larian just absolutely blow it out of the water. They're a wonderful group of people, and I couldn't be prouder. Here's more sort of indie specific games. Superhot is one that's really interesting, just seeing the trajectory of that game. Sea of Stars, that's a fun story. I can tell folks not when I don't have a microphone up in my face. Night in the Woods, Hyperlight Drifter, Wonder Song, just like endless amounts. But as we all know, crowdfunding is very big in the tabletop space. So what tabletop games have been funded through crowdfunding? Honestly, there's so many, I could not figure out what to put on a slide. The cool part of my job and my world in crowdfunding is I get to go into any board game store and look around and go, I'm a part of this and I'm a part of these games through the world of crowdfunding, and I know these people, and it's almost like a high school reunion where I get to like see all the cool things that my friends have done, which is really exciting. But tabletop games are basically a perfect marriage with crowdfunding. So we've sort of talked about the history of crowdfunding. We've talked about what all of these different internet crowdfunding websites look like, right? What are the numbers? What's the data? What's really happening? Let's like sort of get down into it. I'm not a huge data person just in terms of like quantifying it. So I did a very, very high level version of this. So hopefully if you are a data person, you're not like, this is very lame, and I hope you can actually get something from this. The first one I did want to talk about, despite them closing their doors and selling to Republic, was Fig, because they were a disruptor in the market, and they were able to achieve a high level of success in a very small amount of time, which I think is really cool, and I think they should be incredibly proud of themselves. So they had 20 games in total in the history of Fig, and 17 of those games were successfully funded. They raised $13 million in the world of video games just through crowdfunding, which is pretty cool. If I remember correctly too, the equity crowdfunding part was about on par with what was raised here. So like, it's kind of cool. It's a bummer that they ended up selling. It's a bummer that they ended up closing their doors. But I think for like a first time equity crowdfunding in video games, I think this is a really like incredible success story for what they were able to achieve. I have no doubt that like someone else is going to come along and sort of like continue on the coattails of Fig, which is really awesome. Kickstarter. Obviously, I know a lot more here, having, working with those numbers exclusively for years. But I don't have access to all of those numbers any longer. So a friend of mine, Thomas from ICO Partners, he puts together this really cool roundup every year, although the numbers behind Kickstarter have been kind of secret since 2022. So this is basically just up into 2021. But these are the numbers of funded projects for video games that are on Kickstarter. So it ends up being a little bit less than 4,000. So my guess would be, keeping in mind 2012 or 2022 and 2023, I would say there's probably about 4,200 games that have been successfully funded on Kickstarter just in the video games category, which is pretty cool. For the amount of money that's been raised on Kickstarter for video games, right? You can see this spike in 2013, and you see a little bit of another spike in 2015. This was the Broken Age era, and the Bloodstained era, and the Mighty Number 9 era, so on and so on and so on and so on. And when we had a little bit of a dip here and a little bit of a rise here, this is thank you, pandemic. Like, kind of a weird thing to say, but that was definitely the direct result of us all just kind of being at home. I think what's important to take away from this slide, these games that were funded here, released here. These games that funded here, released here. So there's sort of a direct correlation that you can kind of see, right? The difference between video games and tabletop and crowdfunding is that, as we know, working in the video games industry, it takes a long time to make a video game. It takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of people. For board games and for the tabletop space, you need X amount of money, you raise that money, the game comes out. It's a little bit of a perfect marriage. So it's just a different type of experience when you're crowdfunding for video games. Backer kit numbers. It's still too early to have any data. Kickstarter. Backer kit has been available to everybody since summer of this year. So it's still too early to have numbers. So I'm not really sure what's going to happen with Backer Kit and the numbers behind them, but so far, anecdotally, seems like things are going pretty cool, which is awesome. So that kind of leads us to the question, is crowdfunding still an option? No. To some people, it's no. I think it's important to look at everything holistically, and I want to go through why people say no and break that down and either say why I agree or disagree. It's impossible to raise millions of dollars. Yeah. It's really hard. Who can just click a button and raise $1 million? Anyone? Cool, awesome, that's what I thought. It's lots of work for a little return. So is making a game. Crowdfunding is just a scam. This is a big one that I hear a lot, and I'm gonna dive into this a little bit later. The success rate, and we're gonna dive into the success rate a little bit more too, but here's something that's really interesting. Success rate for crowdfunding as a whole is about 41 to 43%. Crowdfunding is actually not a very successful thing, right? It's really difficult to be successful in crowdfunding. In video games, the success rate is less than 25%. There's a lot of reasons as to why that is. One of the biggest reasons is people launch their projects on these various crowdfunding platforms and just expect people to find them. And the days of discoverability because of you just go to Kickstarter.com and you search, video games, those don't really exist anymore. So you have to do we have to do a lot more pre-work, and there's a lot of work that goes into building a successful crowdfunding campaign. In tabletop games, though, the success rate is less than 80%, which is huge. So if you have like a card game and you put it on Backer Kit, Kickstarter, whatever crowdfunding option there is, it's a pretty good chance that you're going to fund, which is kind of cool. I really, really wanted to address this because this is a thing that I heard a lot, and I actually have a quote that I want to quickly touch on. In March of 2015, Kickstarter invited a scholar from the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania to help answer this exact question. Professor Ethan Mollick is an expert in entrepreneurship and innovation who developed an independent study surveying nearly 500,000 backers about project outcomes and backer sentiment. And these are some of the findings. 9% of Kickstarter projects failed to deliver rewards. So I reframe that as 91% of projects actually deliver rewards on Kickstarter. To me, that's not a scam. That's actually a very, very high success rate. And if you go to kickstarter.com/fulfillment, you can read the entire study that was done. 8% of dollars pledged went to failed projects. That's a very, very low number. 7% of backers failed to receive their chosen rewards. And 65% of backers agreed or strongly agreed with the statement that the reward was delivered on time. One of the things that's really important to note here that it's a little difficult to synthesize, but looking at that 9%, or the way that I like to say it is 91% of projects are successful, the number of people that just like took the money and run is less than like 0.05%. What typically happens in the world of crowdfunding and the rewards and people viewing things as a scam is two things. One, your project didn't come on time. That's valid. That's frustrating. I don't want to take that away from anybody. That sucks. You paid for a thing and it didn't come. Yeah, that's frustrating as hell. Totally understandable. But it doesn't mean that the creator just took the money and ran, right? What also happens 9 times out of 10, which is really interesting, is you have a situation like a Mighty Number 9, where the project funded, but the game that ended up coming out looked very different than what the creator promised. And that gets conflated into, well, this is just a scam and I didn't get the thing that I wanted. And that's valid, and I understand that frustration and I understand those feelings. But that doesn't mean that the creator took the money and ran, right? There's a lot of different reasons as to why projects look a little bit different than what they initially look like. But I kind of reject this concept that crowdfunding is a scam. I think crowdfunding is difficult, and I think sometimes you don't get the thing that you want. But a scam, I don't really believe in that. So is crowdfunding still an option after looking at all of this? Yes. Some people say yes. There's a giant marketing opportunity looking at crowdfunding, right? If you ask for a small amount of money on Kickstarter, for example, and you're able to build a community of 2,000 people who otherwise didn't follow you at first, that's a huge marketing opportunity. Maybe your project gets picked up by press. Maybe your project gets picked up by, a huge influencer in the space. It's marketing. That's kind of cool. You get to have publisher eyes on your project. I can tell you for certain, because I was a creep and decided to look people's email addresses up one day. A lot of publishers they have crowdfunding accounts on Kickstarter, and they look at projects. They specifically look for projects that are on Kickstarter in order to find like diamonds in the rough. So the opportunity to have publisher eyes is huge. It's also a community building tool, right? Which kind of goes hand in hand with the marketing opportunity. These two are very, very closely linked. So looking at what crowdfunding is today versus 2013, 2015, the heydays, right? What's terrifying to think about is 2015 was almost 10 years ago. So let that sink in, which is horrifying to kind of realize. Crowdfunding's changed though. And so a lot of people use crowdfunding a lot more for sort of a marketing community building aspect than just looking at it as like, I'm going to fund the entirety of my project. That isn't just for video games, that's also for the tabletop space. So is crowdfunding still an option, right? It's kind of why you are all here. You want to get the answer to that. I say yes, however. The category is key. I say this because something like a dance project, very difficult to crowdfund, especially after COVID. That was one of the most heartbreaking things, was to watch the dance category on Kickstarter just fall to the wayside. Because how do you create a dance project that people can't see in real life? Because you're not allowed to dance with each other and you're not allowed to be in the same room, right? A little bit difficult. So category is key here. Video games, tabletop games, LARP. Oh, sorry. Wow. Let's just run through this really fast. That was fun. That was definitely right. That's my version of a speed run. So your category is key here. How did that happen? Honestly, I'm just impressed. Your platform matters, right? So if you have a huge board game, maybe going to GameFound makes a lot more sense. Maybe Kickstarter makes sense. Got to find the platform that kind of works for you and what your needs are. And that is actually a really cool thing, that now we have so many crowdfunding options in this space that we're not just reliant on Kickstarter. And you're not just fully beholden to one crowdfunding platform. You get to kind of decide what makes sense. You also need to build your community. I feel like if I were to go through the last 8 years of my life and 8 years of my emails and 8 years of my Twitter DMs, the words build your community would probably pop out more than my name, quite honestly. That is a thing that I cannot stress enough. It's incredibly important to build your community before you come to crowdfunding. The days, again, as I've said earlier, of just launching your project and expecting people to come and see it, those don't exist anymore. And if they do, it's like a 0.05% chance that it's gonna happen. Do you have the time and resources to devote to a crowdfunding project? It's about 6 months of prep time before you can actually launch your project, right? That's something to keep in mind. Do you have the funds to be able to sustain you for 6 months before you can launch? Do you have the resources? Are you able to pay a staff? Are you able to hire potential people in order to help you through the process of running a crowdfunding campaign? Something to keep in mind. Genre is also incredibly important, right? If you're gonna make like a AAA shooter, that's going to be millions of dollars. Crowdfunding may not be the best option for you. If you're going to make a small platformer, if you're going to do something that's like, Pixel or 8-bit or something that's like got a little bit of nostalgia to it, crowdfunding is incredibly popular and good for that type of genre. Genre is really important. Also, can you deliver, right? Because you don't want to be one of those people that it's like, I back this project and this whole thing is just a scam. The other thing that I really want to stress here with deliver, I am shocked and amazed how many times this happens. I will talk to people and I'll consult on their projects and I'll see in their stretch goals, oh yeah, I'm going to do a Switch version of the game. And I'm like, great. When did you talk to Nintendo? I haven't talked to them. I just figure I'll put it on a stretch goal and like, I figure Nintendo will just reach out to me. I'm like, okay, all right. So being able to have realistic goals, realistic expectations, and understanding what exactly it is that you're going to deliver and can you deliver it and are you confident that you can deliver it is incredibly key. There's a couple other things to consider. One, your launch day and time of year. Don't launch now because it's the holidays and people want to, they're going to be completely focused on holiday season and travel and gifts and all the things that come with holidays and all of, the consumerism that I despise deeply. The best times to launch that we have seen in the world of crowdfunding are actually the middle of February through the beginning of May, right before the summer season. That's not to say that summer is a bad time to launch. Summer tends to be a little bit quiet, especially for all of the wonderful Europeans who have a thing called vacation. I'll never know what that's like as an American, but I hear it's great. You all are on vacations. That's so cool. For us in the US, people's kids are in school, summer vacation, things like that. Again, vacation. What a wild concept. The second best time to launch is roughly the middle of August through the beginning of October, because that gets you just as kids are going back into school, people are in front of their laptops a lot more, and it's right before the holiday season. So it's right before, all of the chaos that happens. Here's a big one. Who else is launching? So I'm going to ask 2 questions. I'm just curious. Thank you. If you were launching a crowdfunding project, so I'm going to give you 2 options, 1 or 2. Option 1, I want to launch a crowdfunding project when I'm going to have no competition and I'll be seen by everyone. Raise your hand if you agree with that statement. Cool. My guy right here. I'm going to launch a crowdfunding project and I'm going to be in a sea of all these other projects and hopefully ride the coattails of another project. That's the correct answer. So I'll explain. Critical Role launched in the film category in Kickstarter in 2018, I believe it was. 2019, I'm sorry. I only remember because I randomly met Matt Mercer that year at a Gen Con party, and he's super short, which was really surprising to me. And if you don't know what Critical Role is, check it out. It's great. It's super cool. So Critical Role, huge Dungeons and Dragons tabletop role-playing game live actual show, right? And they launched a crowdfunding project on Kickstarter in order to fund their show that they ended up selling to Amazon. What we found is the number of projects that launched, the number of backers that came to Kickstarter to back Critical Role, they all ended up backing games projects. So this is like the only time in history that trickle-down economics has actually worked. It works in crowdfunding weirdly. So what a lot of people will do is they'll look specifically for projects that are going to be launching around, I know this huge creator is going to launch, I'm going to launch on the same day as them. That is a very, very good strategy to do. So thinking about who is launching, seeing what's kind of going on, what's happening in that space. People are always shocked when I tell them that, but like the numbers kind of don't lie, which is a cool thing. The more you crowdfund, the easier it is. That sounds weird, right? Like, doesn't make sense? What we found is that your first crowdfunding project, you're going to sort of go to this 70-30 rule. And what this means is, as a first-time creator anywhere, it actually doesn't matter. BackerKit, GameFound, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, this seems to be across the board. About 70% of your pledges that come in are going to be through the community that you build. So like we said earlier, build your community, right? So that means about 30% of your pledges are going to come in through the platform. That typically also means any sort of promotions that platform can give you. So it's about a 70-30 split. Now what happens is the more that you come back to those crowdfunding platforms, right? First project is sort of your like introduction, your proof that you're able to provide something. These numbers get closer and closer. So suddenly it's like 60-40. Suddenly it's 50-50. So it gets a little bit easier in terms of like finding where that funding is coming from because you've built a community on that platform and you've built that trust. It's a little bit like social media in a way. Ad buys and features can only do so much. I am continuously shocked at the number of times I've heard, well, if I just buy an ad, then a bunch of people are just going to come to my project. I think the thing to keep in mind is that you have 5 seconds to grab someone's attention. And it seems like that 5 seconds it's just getting shorter and shorter every single day. I would even argue you only have 3 seconds. Like, there's so many tabs that are open on our computers, right? There's so many tabs and there's so many ads and it's just you're being screamed at constantly when you're on the internet, right? So an ad buy and a feature on any of these platforms, it's only going to do so much. It will help your project 100%, it absolutely will, but it's not something that you can rely on to bring in the majority of what your funding is for these different crowdfunding projects. It's such a bummer, but like I want to be honest with you guys. So to wrap it up, is crowdfunding still an option? I think yes. I would argue yes, it's still an option. It's still profitable. It's still a thing that's happening. It's still active, right? You have all these different crowdfunding options. You have all these games that are funding. Like, it's still a thing. But you have to be willing to accept that crowdfunding has changed pretty drastically in the space. You have to kind of accept that crowdfunding is a piece of the pie. It's no longer the whole pie. I think that's kind of a cool thing. And I think there's a lot of like validity in that statement, just because it means that you're able to find funding from multiple different sources, which means that you've created relationships with all these different funding sources that will continue through the journey of seeing your game come to life for the rest of your career. Like, I think there's something really cool and really beautiful and really interesting about the shifting narrative of what crowdfunding looks like. That's kind of the bulk of this entire presentation. Hopefully I've been able to change a couple minds here. This is my name, Anya Combs. The easiest way to remember it is Anya combs her hair. It's a little silly, but it works. This is my Twitter. I mean, Twitter's a horrible cesspool. Don't go there, but also you can DM me if you want. At literally every other platform, this is my handle. I tried to get that on Twitter, and Elon was like, it's too long of a handle. And I was like, you're a fascist. This is my email address, which you're welcome to email me anytime. I'm always happy to chat with folks. I wanted to put this into just to thank DevGAMM for having me and the whole DevGAMM team. You're all wonderful and amazing, and thank you for putting together such an incredible conference. I think we're going to do some Q&A, and I'll just leave this slide up here if you guys want to get in touch with me.
Do we have any burning questions in the room? Oh, I gotta choose here. We gotta take the gentleman that is closest to the microphone, and then we'll pass it down.
Did you have a mic this whole time? Oh my God. Secret microphone.
Thank you. I've got a practical question. We are newer in the game market. We're developing our first game and would like to crowdfund. But I'm really shocked with this 70-30 rule. What do you think? Is it an option for us? We don't have a community yet. So
build your community. I mean, that's the thing. Like,
what is the minimal community for?
So that's kind of dependent on what you need. I mean, really, the most honest answer is like build as much of a community as you can. So I'll give you a quick formula, right? So and I'm terrible with numbers, so this is the only reason I constantly use this example is because I could barely add 2 + 2, quite honestly. If you have $50,000, and now that I've said that, I'm absolutely going to get this wrong, so please someone make sure that my math is correct here. If your goal is $50,000, and let's say that your average pledge amount is like $20, which is about an average amount on Steam, how much a game would cost, divide those numbers. I believe that's 2,500. Math people, am I right? Anyone? No one here is good in math. Hell yeah, I'm with my people. I believe that's about 2,500, right? 2,500 people pledge. Yeah, I'm good? Yes, nailed it. 2,500 people pledge $20 each. You've met your goal. Double that number. So you want your community size to be about 5,000 people, because if you think about it from the 70-30 split, that roughly guarantees about that 70% of people that need to pledge $20 each in order for you to meet that 70-30 goal. Ideally, you want to triple that, right? Because you have to think about it from a longevity standpoint. This isn't just about crowdfunding. These are people that are going to follow your entire career. So you want to build a community that's going to follow you through the entirety of what you're trying to do, right? That's kind of the cool part here, is it's not just this is a moment in time, this is forever.
Thank you.
Great question. And we're going to pass the microphone to Vincent.
Hello. One question. You said at some point that during the 2008 crisis, you saw an uptick in the amount of crowdfunding that people received, and I wonder because I feel like in a financial crisis, usually people keep their money a bit tighter to their chest. Why do you think that is? That it went up?
This really fun thing called escapism. I think we saw this in 2020, right? Because the thing to remember about 2020 is like, how many layoffs did people go through in 2020, right? People were losing their jobs. People were being told, at least, in the States, in our dumb country, if you don't come to work, you get fired, right? Like people were just, like it was rough, it was horrible. But I think people look to forms of escapism in order to deal with what's going on in the reality. I think that's also why in 2020 we saw this huge uptick in tabletop role-playing games. D&D just exploded, right? Indie Press Revolution had some of the best years on record because of the pandemic, which is feels icky and unethical to say, but it is a reality. I think these pieces of content that you can play over and over and over again, if you dial it down and you're okay, well, how many hours have I spent playing this game versus how many hours have I spent watching a movie? A movie, let's say to rent, is I don't know, how much is a movie to rent now? I feel like that
$3.50 on Amazon.
Yeah, $3.50 on Amazon. I just had a total Arrested Development moment where I was how much is a banana, Michael? $7. Just very out of touch these days. So a movie's $3.50 for 2 hours. A game is, let's say, $20 that you're going to play for 5 years. So escapism is a very powerful thing that people look to when they're depressed.
Thank you.
All right, next question, the gentleman in the back.
Hi, Anya. Hope your day's going well. I'm just a little curious because I actually have a friend who's attempted 2 Kickstarter campaigns of a horror game that he has been developing for actually a couple of years now, 10 years in 2024. I couldn't remember the name of the game right now. I'm super sorry, but like he's considering launching a Kickstarter the 3rd time. He knows how much he wants to get. He understands the reason why 2 other Kickstarters failed. But he's still not entirely sure. Would somebody with history of failed Kickstarters, who develops a game which is in the genre that may have been a little outdated, would someone like that be able to make a Kickstarter that will succeed, and what will they need to accomplish and establish to make sure that the Kickstarter like that succeeds?
That's a huge question. So I'm gonna break that down as best I can into 3 categories here. So 1, I reject the idea of a failed Kickstarter, and I'll explain that. There's no such thing as a failed Kickstarter. There's just projects that don't fund, right? You can have a successful project and it's a horrible experience. That's a failed project to me, right? Or you can have a successfully funded project and you've learned nothing through the process. That's a failed project. A project that doesn't fund is an opportunity for a learning experience. That's it. That's all it is, right? I hate this idea. And I understand, right? It's human nature to be like, I didn't reach my goal. I have failed. That's a very simplistic view of it. I want to challenge people to look at it from a different perspective and view it as an opportunity to learn something and make something better, right? So first, no such thing as a failed Kickstarter project. 2, genre, like I said earlier, important. Now, something to keep in mind that we've seen is that in general, in the games industry, right, horror games have just like had this research. I mean, look at me. Obviously, I'm like a fan of horror. Got Baphomet earrings and a skull. Like, this is a thing that I'm into. There's been a huge resurgence of that. I would also keep in mind one of the first successfully funded video games on Kickstarter was Friday the 13th. So it exists. It sounds like 3. Your friend needs to do the community building specifically for the horror genre. Finding those discords, finding that community, finding where people who are fans of horror, finding streamers who are fans of horror. I think that probably is a little bit of the missing link. To get deeper into it, I'd have to really kind of look at what's going on at the project, which I can't really do right now. But I'm happy to chat with your friend 100% if you want to give them my email.
Yeah, I will.
Cool.
And I can stop by after the talk if that works.
Perfect. I would love that. Thank you.
All right, do we have any more questions? We have,
we have a lot.
So many. We're going to start with Theodore, who was the first one to raise his hand.
Oh.
Yeah, friends of mine did a classical adventure and now want to do a classical point-and-click adventure.
Mm-hmm.
The first game is with a publisher, so they cannot advertise with it too much. What are the chances of a classical 2D point-and-click on Kickstarter today?
Today, I would say that, that's an interesting question. I don't see too many of those projects, but again, if you can build that community, you have a higher chance of success.
Okay, thanks.
Great.
Yeah, no problem.
Next, Tobias.
Yeah, as you mentioned, like the dance. So thanks for the talk, as great as always. So you mentioned like the dance category fall off the track during the pandemic. Is it coming back, or is it like why you say not going that route on crowdfunding because of the trickle down effect you mentioned before? Because there's no audience there right now.
Yeah, I think there's a couple categories that have fallen short. Dance is one. Food is not as successful as it used to be. Although I've seen weirdly hot sauce tends to be a really big thing for people to crowdfund. I don't really know why that is. To be honest with you, I think this is just anecdotal. Yeah, I think part of it is a little fluctuation. I also think that there are so many like food sensitivities and food preferences that are happening nowadays that I think it's a little bit difficult to find something that's like all encompassing. So if you have a food project, you have to be like, it's nut free and soy free and food free. Like I don't know what people eat these days. So just thinking about like the changing of times. For dance, I think it's that the audience has just kind of fallen to the wayside. And I also think a lot of that is dependent on where you're from, right? Like I live in New York City, there's dance everywhere. There's all a bunch of weird performances and art things and, you know, things like that. And it might be that like, let's say that somebody that's in like, you know, a tiny town in Nebraska, they don't have access to things like that. And so why would they want to put money into something that they're not going to see, right? Categories where the reward is something that's not an instant, to a certain degree, an instant gratification, mostly meaning I know I'm going to get that, and I know I'm going to be able to play that, see that, eat that, taste that, have that sensation of whatever it is. Not having that and just sort of like backing something that will help someone else doesn't feel like crowdfunding, it feels like fundraising.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Great. We're going to take hopefully 2 more questions, but they have to be short. We're going to start with the gentleman in the black hoodie.
Hi, thank you for the talk. I was wondering if there's like a sweet spot for the amount that you ask for in a crowdfund.
Yes.
Because in my logic thinking is like if you ask for too little, people are going to take you seriously, he doesn't know what he's doing. And if you ask for too much, you are never going to get funded.
Yes, that is a little bit of a deeper question. I can give you a quick answer, and I can give you the long, very, very verbose version
Let's do the
later.
quick answer.
Yeah. The quick answer is yes. The sweet spot is between 30,000 and 75,000 in video games.
Okay, thank you.
That's great. Last question. It's the same one. Then we'll take the woman here in the middle.
Yeah, thank you. I have a short question about the mobile app games. Do you have any data about that? In which platform is most successful?
Mobile games are nearly impossible to crowdfund. I actually would not recommend using crowdfunding for mobile games. There's a handful of reasons. The biggest is the restrictions that Apple and Google put on what you can give out for rewards. It's incredibly difficult to offer a reward in the mobile space. So you'd have to rely on things like physical rewards, which ends up increasing your costs because it costs a lot of money to manufacture and it costs a lot of money to ship. Is it the main reason or is there more? That's the main reason, yeah.